question and response type deal. So if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll come to you with the microphone. You're allowed to ask your question. Be as free as you want to be. We're all adults in here. We're going to have an amazing time. Say word. Word. And let us get into this thing. When we introduce these panelists, we can definitely give them a round of applause as they're entering, but once they all get seated and situated, we're going to definitely give them all a collective round of applause. Say word. And listen, let's do this. Once again, tap into the experience. If you have a question, ask it. If you're curious about something, ask it. There are no wrong questions. You don't have to feel like, oh, I want to ask this, but I don't want the room thinking I'm dumb or slow. Listen, whatever's on your mind, whatever's on your heart, whatever's on your spirit, if you feel like somebody up here can provide the answer, ask the question. Say word. So y'all ready to get into this thing? Yeah. Now, this is what I will say. When the event begins and the panelists are up here, let's try and make sure we respect the mic. Say word. That means when somebody's talking, whether they're asking a question or whether they're one of the panelists, let's give them the opportunity to talk without you having sidebar conversation. Say word. If you would like to have sidebar conversation, there's an exit right there. Go out of it, make a left or right, and have your conversation, then come back. Say word. If somebody calls you on your phone and you want to talk to them, there's an exit right there. Go out of it, make a left or right, and have your conversation on your phone. Say word. Word. We are going to respect the mic, the individual in the audience, and the panelists as well, because we are here to learn. We are here for an experience. Now let's get into this thing. They ready? Zulu, you ready? Zulu like, I stay ready. Well, you see my shirt? My name on it. Alright. So let's get going. Okay. And let's make sure we're making some noise for Black Excellence. And listen, the panelists are phenomenal individuals. They're going to do their bios because I want them to have the opportunity to let you know who they are. I didn't want to take the time and try to read, because I mean, they got accolades upon accolades. If it was my bio, it would be like, GED. And hey, it's okay. I passed. Thank y'all. Clap it up for GED, please. Thank you. Give it up for the GED. Damn. Tough crowd. I went to college too, though. Hey. But I just went there. I didn't stay or nothing. Listen, y'all ready? I'm just joking. I graduated from Payne College. Thank you. All right, we ready? Talking to her. We ready? Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's keep that energy. Let's make sure we're focused. And listen, we are on camera, so keep smiling and make sure we're having a good time. Get that energy going. Let's make some noise right quick. I need everybody clap your hands, make some noise. Our first panelist of the evening is the lovely Dr. Newton. Make some noise for Dr. Newton. Beautiful Black queen. Y'all keep making noise for the lovely Dr. Newton. Up next we have William Jones. Make some noise for William Jones, everybody. After Mr. William Jones, we have Poet. Y'all show some love for the poet. Let's make some noise. Keep that energy going for Mr. Kerry Height. Make some noise for him. Behind him we have Mr. B.R. McCoy. Make some noise. Let's go. I'm sure you're familiar with this gentleman. Everybody make some noise for Mr. Mark John Jeffries. Make some noise for him. There you go. Mr. Sean Martin, make some noise for him. Keep the energy going. Once we get all our panelists seated. And lastly, put this function on. He's a ringside doctor, founder and CEO of Van David, co-and creator of Spoken Word, Phenomenal Spoken, and the creator of Power and Power Watch of the Black Panther. Y'all give it up for my dude, Mr. Dr. Greg Banks. Make some noise, everybody. Let's go. That's a beautiful panel, don't y'all agree? Amen. Black excellence. Black excellence.
There's another mic if you want 2 mics. Or you give it to somebody.
So now listen. Let's make sure if you have a question, all you got to do is raise your hand. Keep your hand raised. I'll try to make my way over to you. You know, you don't have to yell or scream or holler, but if you need to get my attention, just keep your hand up. I'll make sure I come over, and so you can ask your question. Say word. Word. Man, the energy feels amazing to hear. You're absolutely beautiful. We got the cameraman around. We got the gentleman taking pictures, video, everything. So look, we are here to have an amazing experience. Dr. Greg Banks, you ready to get into this thing, sir?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Welcome to the Black Panther Power Watch. Y'all make some noise.
How's everybody doing this evening? Did anybody just kind of sort of like that film? Yeah. It was phenomenal. I want to go around the panel. I want everybody to introduce themselves a little bit, and I want them to tell us all what their connection is with the Panther and when they found it. Personally, I wanted to start it off a little bit because I'm greedy like that. I wanted to tell you, when I was a kid, you know, I used to collect a whole lot of comic books, and Fantastic Four was a favorite one of mine. And sometimes, you know, you're living in a world and you don't really pay attention to what's around you. And you're just taking it and accepting it the way it is, you know, like a Seinfeldian type of thing, where it's like, everybody's white. And, you know, we got the Peter Parker, Spider-Man, you know, it was dope. Everybody was white. Fantastic Four, everybody was white. Avengers, everybody was white. And then one day, you know, I was collecting the Fantastic Four. I rode up on my little bicycle up to the comic book shop, and it was like, boom, Fantastic Four, the battle of the Black Panther. And I was like, who is this cat? And he looked dope. He had a little pimp cape, a little black thing going on there, you know, and he was kicking them in the behind. And when is the last time you ever heard of that before? So I was amazed. And then he took his hood off, and he was a black guy.
Yes, he was.
Do you understand what that means?
Yes.
50 years before President Obama, a black hero. And I was just like enraptured from that moment on. So let's go around the panel. I want to talk to Dr. Du, and she is a Ghanaian king, y'all. Not a queen, a king. She's a queen as well, but a king. And she's been associated with the Congressional Black Caucus and the first archaeological expedition to Egypt by African Americans. So now the story's really going to be told. Dr. Du, tell us about your first introduction to Black Panther.
My first introduction, I don't want to discuss my age, was also through the comics, and from that there was a feeling of warmth and psychological well-being. And when I heard about the movie, I just couldn't wait, because it was in production, started in 2014. And when I first heard about that it was going to happen, I kept thinking, is America ready for this? And is it going to be ready? Are we, as people of color, ready for this? Because maybe we no longer will have any excuses. And so I felt very empowered by it, and I'll get into that, but I really have been, it's almost like being a Trekkie. I've been a Black Panther advocate ever since I first saw it in the comics, heard about it in 2014, and now living it in 2018.
Thank you. Brother William Jones, I was happened to be in, went to the story about Wakanda at the Reginald Lewis Museum in Baltimore last week. And it was an awesome panel, y'all. It was incredible. He showed some highlights that you would not see anywhere else. And then I saw this dude talking, and I was like, okay, he seems to really know what's going on. He's talking about resources, natural resources, things. Sometimes they take it and they package it and they sell it back to us. I was like, this cat is on the ball. So tell us your first experience with Black Panther.
First of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being up here part of this panel. My first experience, basically, similar to what was already stated as a child, I've always been a fan of comic books. And I just remember being introduced to the Black Panther, and it was already stated, sometimes you don't know what's missing until you find it. And to see that character, you know, he just spoke to me, and I still have the first Black Panther comic that I ever collected, you know, and just to look back on that, you know, I always remember that experience, so that was my first introduction.
Awesome. Next up, somebody who always carries themselves like a queen, always representing. Poet, tell us about your first experience.
Oh, I thought he was talking about somebody else. Thank you for having me. I wasn't a big comic book fan. The first comic books I was introduced to, all I saw were white people, and I was like, I'm over it. So in 2014, I started hearing the whispers of this movie coming that was gonna have this all-black cast, new people, old people. I heard Angela Bassett, and I was like, my auntie in it, I'm there. But then Chadwick Boseman, who's my husband in my head, I was like, I gotta celebrate that too. So for me, it was about possibly having the opportunity to take my niece to a movie where she would see girls with Afro puffs and braids, and she wouldn't think that the prettiest girl in the world was the chick from Frozen. So after that, I made it my business to spread the word. Anybody I could tell about it, invite to it. That's how I found out it wasn't about like Black Panther, it was like Black Panther. And I like the fact that it taught me something along the way. So that was my introduction, and it was one of the best introductions I've ever had. And I hope that as people see this movie, they embrace it and do more than dress up for the premiere, but go plant seeds in our communities, because our Black and brown kids need to not just see that, we need to be a representation of the Wakanda that we saw in that movie. And we're not always that. So.
Yeah. Next up to the mic is my man, Kerry Hype. Let me tell you about this cat. This is how I got to know him, through audiobooks. You know, I got this big travel, you know, this big commute every day, 2-3 hours and whatnot, and I'm like picking up through all the audiobooks, and I'm like, wait a minute. This cat did 30 voices in one story. Guys, girls, anybody, everybody, politicians. This guy kills it. He's the slayer of audiobooks. He's the top audio guy in the business. And we got a little special announcement a little bit later on that's going to let you in on what we like to do. Kerry Hype.
What's up, what's up?
Yeah.
I think Poet just announced her intentions to run for the next president. Thanks for your speech right there. I got introduced, similar to a couple other people, through to Black Panther through the comics. He was different in the regard that the only other black, I guess, semi-hero we had was Luke Cage, and he was like the hero for hire, but he was more so the mercenary from the hood. You know. But this was a representation of a king, which we didn't see at all. So he was someone like, oh, so there's a black king out there. All right, yeah, he looks like me. All right, we can do that too. And it just took the story out of the hood, and it took you to a place in our history where we were the leaders. You know, we were cutting edge in everything, medicine, science, math. So it just harkened back to that. So I just thought it was like good lessons, even though it was a second-dimensional realm.
Okay, next to the mic is my man, VR McCoy, alias Dirty Harry, from back in the day. He plays the Kaplan, the Z chapter at Howard University, and this dude, man, he let me know, you know, how to actually do it right. So this guy right here, man, is my homeboy from way back in the day, and then all of a sudden I started seeing something out of him too. Out of nowhere, this cat can write. He's a supernatural thriller author. His books are off the chain. 2 of them are going to be involved in a giveaway tonight. He's going to be working with me and Van David. In the future, we got a special surprise for you in a little bit to talk about that. But this is the man. You really need to read his stuff. Positive Black male images, VR McCoy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Came up from Atlanta. My home is here in DC though. I'm born and raised here. Love coming back home. My experience with the Panther came as a child as well, growing up with comics. I was always into the darker characters like Blade, which a lot of people don't realize is a Marvel character.
Yeah.
So seeing Blade, Luke, you know, has carried it, you know, it got me into the Panther as well. Always been into the darker characters that, like Blade, so. But when I saw, you know, that they were coming out with a Panther movie and it was an all-black production, cast, director, like, man, I'm there, you know. Let me go home and be with, you know, the homies and check out this great event. So that's my experience with the Panther. That's my experience with Marvel, and I'm looking forward to some more black superheroes coming out. Hopefully, they'll rejuvenate Blade and come out, as I was speaking to Will, come out with the next Iron Man, who's actually a female, a black female. Her name's Ironheart, by the way.
Wow. You didn't know this. Next on the mic, Mark John Jeffries. Anybody know this guy? Yeah. Young 50 and Get Rich or Die Trying. I just turned on Charlie's Angels the other day and he popped up. Spider-Man 2. How old are you now? 13. He's 27 now, right?
I'm 13, bro.
Okay, he's 27 years old and he's got over 40 films to his credit. The hottest black working man in the business, Mark John Jeffries.
Oh, so I just start?
Oh yeah.
So when I was first, the way I was first introduced to Black Panther was through one of Marvel's old Avengers cartoons, and I hated him at first. I'm like, why the black dude gotta be the bootleg Batman? And then it made me go back and read the comics to see like his origin, and then I realized, I was like, wow, this is deep. So often are people depicted in a negative light, or our moments of struggle from the history is what the media more so focuses on. So to see a comic that really showed like our strength, it was just different for me. And then after that, after I realized where he was from and the whole Wakanda thing and everything, you know, I walked around growling for a few days, feeling like I was ready to fight somebody. But, and then I found out about the film, and I just personally felt that it was very important, especially for now, because our media, as far as TV shows, are picking up a lot of traction with, you know, the shows like the Empires and the Stars and the Powers and what's the show with Shorty from HBO, Insecure, and it's just like if you tell a blind person that the sky is green, after a while they start believing it, you know, if enough people say it, because they don't know any better. But if you give them the opportunity to see different, then now it opens up their mind and it allows them to see the reality. So this movie is just so important for like our youth today, because they only relate to the negative things that's shown in the media constantly, the drugs and the gangs and all of that. So once I found out it was coming out, man, I was like, yeah, I'm buying my tickets ASAP. Word.
Next up on the mic is my man, a real dude. When I say a real dude, a real brother, he turned down a trip to Africa for a Black Panther premiere to be here tonight. Gotta give him a love for that. That's just the beginning of the introduction here. So this guy is the artist for the Black Panther. He's done like a whole run of the Black Panther. I mean, and he kind of reintroduced me to the character and whatnot. I follow his art a lot. I mean, he's an incredible artist, great visual displays. He's worked with Robert Kirkman from The Living Dead on the graphic novel. Walking Dead, I'm sorry. Walking Dead on the graphic novel. And this dude is up there. And he's making big moves. Sean Martin.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming out. It's nice to talk to you guys. Like my man Doc Greg, I call him Doc Greg because he's a huge comic fan, and so I always kind of make him think like, I kind of say Doc Greg is a nod to Doc Samson, and that's a real comic book kind of reference. But anyway, like Greg said, I'm a professional comic book artist. I'm originally from New York, but I've been down in DC since 1995, originally from the Bronx, and I got my start working for Marvel Comics when I was a junior in college. And ever since, I've been working with Marvel, DC. As Greg said, I currently work with Robert Kirkman, the creator of The Walking Dead, on a series called Thief of Thieves. It doesn't involve zombies. But over the years, it's been a very unique experience for me being an artist, a black artist from the Bronx, getting to draw some of the most iconic characters in the world. I've drawn Batman, I've drawn Captain America, I've drawn Black Panther, Luke Cage, just the X-Men characters. So it's really interesting for me seeing everybody else sort of catch up with what us comic guys and ladies have known all these years that there's so many cool characters. And also it's really great to see a lot of people behind the scenes getting a lot of light, because whenever I get interviewed about being a black comic artist, people say, oh, you know, how come there are no black comic artists? And I'm like, no, actually there have always been black comic artists and comic artists of color behind the scenes, but back in the day before social media, you never knew. All you had was a name, and unless you had a very ethnic sounding name, no one really knew who you were. So for example, my name is Sean Martinborough, so you don't know what I am until I walk in the door, and then it might be like, ah. But I've always had people of color that have been drawing comics that have inspired me over the years. And I've also had a feeling of obligation to represent whenever I draw a comic book. So if I get a script where there's no people of color in the script, I usually stick a person of color. If I can't change a character, I'll put a character in the background behind the background like this. You know, and so that's just something that I've done over the years in every project that I've been on. And when I got the chance to draw the Black Panther for Marvel Comics back in 2010, it was really cool. But the thing is, once you start working in comics, it's a job, and you kind of forget. And once you start drawing, you say, wait a minute, I'm actually drawing the Black Panther. And it was a really cool experience. So I'm just really excited. I was fortunate to go to the premiere in LA and see the film last month, and it's awesome. So I can't really wait to see it again for a second time. So I'm happy to answer any questions or share any of my information about comics with you guys.
Well, I'm really not gonna let you all put that easy. This guy co-created some characters in what films and TV?
One of the cool things about drawing comics is that you can work on a project years ago, and then if Hollywood discovers it, makes it into a TV series, all of a sudden you get a check in the mail. So over the years, yeah, I created characters that have popped up in Deadpool, the new Fox TV show The Gifted. I'm blanking out now. Oh, Justice League, there was a character that I created that was in that movie. I got like an invitation to the premiere out of nowhere, to the premiere. I was like, well, why? And then when I went to the premiere, and I actually had a cool credit at the end. People were blowing up my phone saying, dude, we saw your name in the end credits. And I was like, oh, really? So it just, over the years, they just use characters. If you create something, you never know when it might sort of get its own life. So that's like a really cool thing about being a comic book artist. Yeah.
Well, listen, hey, appreciate it. Jump into this iconic film, huge black cast. They take you back in time to, what was it, 1992, I think it was, where, you know, we get to see the origins of a major villain who's not really that much of a villain, because we'll get into that a little bit later. But it's the flashback was incredible, and we got to see T'Challa's dad, T'Chaka, who was the original Black Panther, well, the latest Black Panther in the line of Black Panthers. And it was incredible to see him. What was the security force's name again?
You put me on the spot with all this?
Hey, cameraman.
Was it Dora Milaje?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
They just tapped their little spears and whatnot. He just appeared out of nowhere, and that was incredible. I mean, the technology in this film, it was just like awesome. And then, you know, he had to do something that he didn't really want to do. You know, he ended up confronting his brother, and that was a real powerful scene. And then his brother looked like, you know, he felt like he had been betrayed. He wasn't really betrayed because he was doing some things that were not in line with what Wakanda was all about. So, what do you guys think about that first scene?
Oh yeah.
Anybody from the audience, because this is how we do it at the Power Watch. Just raise your hand.
First of all, I was shocked to see one of my favorite actors, Sterling K. Brown. That was, that's right, you did. So take the mic and but seeing that and seeing him, you know, because he's one of my favorites on This Is Us and just won an Emmy, so that was pretty heartwarming. So right off the bat, I was into the film, sucked into the film, so I appreciate that. And it just really set the scene for, you know, what the film was really going to be about, because I didn't know what to expect. So I appreciated seeing the first scene, and you know, it's being set in Oakland, 1992, kind of what's going on in Oakland, California, drugs, trafficking, guns, all those type of things. So it was good. The first thing just set a great tone for the entire movie. So did appreciate that, because it sucked me right in right away.
Thank you. And it kind of lets you know that Wakanda's for real. I mean, you know, we have, you know, the United States, and we think about a foreign country and whatnot. We don't think that they got spies over here. You know, and they were like, there was a spy and then there was a counter spy to the spy, so it was just incredibly crazy. So I was like, well, that sounds like United States stuff to me. So a lot of times we get that ignorance, those stereotypes from those other countries, and they think, you know, they're not at our level, and sometimes they really are. So moving forward, I mean, we got to see Wakanda for the first time, and my heart just leaped out of my skin. It was incredible. It was just technological marvel, and you know, they were hidden from the world, and it sounds like they knew what they were doing, huh? They were trying to avoid, you know, getting caught up in everything else that was going on. And they gave us a little history lesson on what that is, what the world was evolving into. You know, they're all fighting against each other, slavery, war. It was crazy. What do you guys think about that?
I'll speak on the first scene and what I thought. It made me think of the quote, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And it made me think of right now, there are people who know people that are doing not great things, but you don't necessarily tell them that they're not doing right because they're your brother or your cousin, but the wrongs that they're doing are gonna be at the detriment of your community and the people around you. When you tell me that you steal something from, you actually sent somebody to our country, let them kill us to get it, you knew what you were doing, but still for you, at that moment, you weren't thinking that you were your brother's keeper. And I think it didn't just set a tone for what we were gonna see in the movie, but how we interact and view with each other every day. If you felt that you and your son had been left, not reaching back home, sometimes we need help and we won't turn to the person next to us and be like, I need help. Instead, I'll do what I feel like I have to do to survive. And now we've created this mentality when everybody's rolling for self and you're not thinking of the other people of your tribe. That's what you get. I'm willing to sacrifice all of you so I'm good, not understanding at the end of the day, he still wasn't good because your situation was still what it was, and now it's even worse for all those involved. So for me, looking at that first scene, it was a look at how black people really treat each other. A lot of times we keep you out, then once the sugar honey iced tea hit the fan, you trying to clean it up, and then a lie begets a lie to cover this, to do that. So I'm hoping that we looked at that, how we treat the person next to us, and maybe we'll interact differently moving forward. If you see somebody hurting, reach out. If you hurt and say that you're hurting, I'm not okay, help me.
Absolutely. That's a great thing. We got a question over here. Got a question over here. Can you stand up, please? Thank you. That was an excellent point, Paul.
This is a comment and a question about the first scene, but you can hold a question for later. The comment was, I really appreciated the technology. In the first scene, it showed the spaceship going off, and being a technical person, I really enjoyed seeing that, okay, there's some real good tech stuff coming up. The question is, how close did the movie tie to the comic books? Because I'm not a comic book reader. And I hear a lot of people talk about how sometimes the movie veers away from the actual comic book. So maybe later on you could talk about that.
Well, you know what? Hold on, can you guys hear me? Okay. Listen, as a person that's drawn a comic book and I'm part of that comic book sort of sphere, I thought it was amazing. I thought it was very accurate. But you know, of course, you have to make changes when you go from the comic book to the movie. Because to me, like one of the most interesting things that they changed was there's the character of M'Baku, who played in the comic book he's called Manib, which is really problematic when people heard that he was going to be in this movie, because in the comic he has like a big sort of gorilla, he's pretty stereotypical in the comic. But the way they translated him to the movie was just amazing. I thought he was like one of my favorite characters in the movie, and he just had so much charisma. So I think that you have to make changes. I think in all the Marvel movies they've made very smart choices to make changes when you adapt a comic book, especially a comic book that was created back in the 60s, 50s, 70s, when things were really kind of wacky, the way they were representing people. And it's awesome to see them kind of make that jump to 2018 and beyond. Yeah.
Well, Sean, I didn't want to let you off the hook once again.
No, I'm here. Ask me.
But basically, what's happening is, you know, I read the original Black Panther comics, and I was like, okay, you know, I liked it a lot. And when he went to Africa, not so much, because I was like, wow, these cats wearing grass skirts and flying around spaceships. It's kind of like, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. But basically what happened is later on, and I missed out on that and had to go back and read some of it, a lot of different authors kind of evolved the Black Panther story. Heard something about Reginald Hudlin. Could you care to comment on that?
You know, I never read Reggie's run of Black Panther, and this is one of the things, like when you're a fan, you get to read everything, but when you start working as a professional, you don't read as much. I think one of the things I really loved about this movie is that it really addresses, African Americans and Africans and that kind of divide and also the similarities that we have. And for example, I've been to Kenya. My sister has been abroad many times to different African countries, and it amazes me how little Black Americans know about Africa. People are surprised, and a lot of times we, a lot of times we tend to put it on people who are not of color being sort of ignorant or backward. But there are a lot of people that don't realize that there are cities in Africa. So one of the things my sister, so when she went to see the movie, she was like, yeah, that wasn't a big surprise to me to see cities in Africa, because you go to Nairobi and that's a city. You go to Lagos, that's a city. And I think a lot of people that have not traveled to Africa or don't know a lot about Africa were surprised and probably had their eyes open to see Wakanda, of course, is futuristic, but in a lot of ways it wasn't. If you look closely, there were like some dirt roads mixed with hover cars, and people that looked like they might be out of the 70s, and then people that had very sort of authentic African garb. And I really thought the movie did a great job of really presenting so many different slices of African culture in this movie, and then sort of putting a futuristic twist on it. I just thought it was just educational on so many different levels. That I loved it.
I just got a question over here right quick.
Yep.
Got a Black Panther on his chest. Do you transform if you push it?
Punch and find out.
Not really a question, but a statement. Just what you said, Sean, was very interesting. A lot of people, when they talk about the movie, they talk about the technology and how amazing the technology was, and they really made a point in the movie to stress that. But when I look at that, I see Wakanda as Egypt, because if you think about Egypt, there were universities, you had the pyramids, you had all of these structures that the rest of the world, and particularly Europe, Egypt was so far technology, so advanced, yes. And so I kind of made that correlation. So when they talk about the technology, I'm thinking, well, that's what Egypt was, because you had Europeans coming to universities in Egypt and learning, and then they would go back, and just like with Ulysses Claw would say, those people are savages. And that's the narrative that they would put out. They're savages, they're beasts, but yet they're raping and stealing all of their knowledge. So that was what I really saw. And just what you said, that's the narrative that they put to us here in America. So we, in our mind, think Africans are savages, or they're
Simple.
they're simple, and when we look at that they talk in different dialects and all that, not realizing that they stripped us away from that. That's us. That's our culture. That's our language. And here in America, we are probably the only ethnic group or race that does not have its own language, or you understand?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, that takes an excellent point right there. We'll get to your question in 1 minute. Basically, Sean brings up the cultural element, and that's just another thing that just in my heart, I had to snatch and put it back in my chest again, because it was insane. First of all, it just felt like, everybody knows, and you get it kind of trickling down into your system about how they took the things from our culture and how they separate us from our culture. We couldn't talk to each other, we couldn't learn to read, we couldn't learn to write. And then we see all these cultural practices of Africans, and that was just incredible. It was like they were putting it back into us. And Dr. Du,
I'm going to defer to him, and then I'm going to speak.
Let's do it.
A couple of points. There were so many points being raised. First of all, in terms of the opening scene, I was kind of torn, because honestly, I was trying to decide who was actually right in that argument. I didn't really see it as Africans over there competing against Africans over here. I saw it as two different ideologies that were competing and have competed. And I think they raised the question as to whether or not those two ideologies can coexist in the same space. Also, what I found interesting is, please remember, when we talk about the Black Panther, this was not a black creation. These were two white men that created, Stan Lee and Kirby, that create this character. And the reason why I find that interesting is because they raised the question of, what would an African nation look like had it gone untouched by Europeans? And what you have is a technologically advanced civilization because they were never touched by Europeans. They were never colonized. They were never occupied. So I think that that kind of answers the question of what they fear and what they recognize would have happened had they left us alone. You mentioned ancient Egypt. What would ancient Egypt have ascended to had they not been interfered with Europeans and so forth? So those are the types of things that I found very interesting in terms of the way that the film was set up. And really quickly, when you mentioned the correlation between the comic and the film, it was Christopher Priest and Reggie Hudlin, two black writers that really elevated the status of the Black Panther character. Now you have Coates writing them, so you're kind of continuing that. Before that, you had Wakanda being mentioned, but it wasn't a central character. And as was mentioned, they still had them kind of on the edge between that stereotype and with some hints of technological advancements. But it was really Christopher Priest and Reggie Hudlin and now Coates that have elevated the status of the Black Panther. That's where they were really drawing the motivation from when they created that film.
Yes, and I just wanted to buttress what he said, but also to talk about the fact that this is a trans-African film. It is not just one country, it's a composite of many aspects of African culture, and not only ancient Kemet, which you referred to as Egypt, being that advanced, but if we also go back, there is a king that is very similar to the king of Wakanda, and that would have been Mansa Musa I of Mali, who had so much gold, he dropped so much gold on his way to Mecca that the price of gold was destabilized for 12 years. And so what we're seeing is a combination of both historical realities as well as futuristic ideation. And the fact that when they were on the mountain, I remember looking and saying, oh my God, that's Mali. You know, those are the Bandara cliffs of Mali. And I kept going back and forth because having been in every African country, not only just Ghana, but also all the others and to Kemet many, many times. And so I'm envisioning that what we see is the composite of the greatness of a people who, had they not been interfered with, would have created a world that was a bit better for all of us. The parallel, of course, of Wakanda would be Ethiopia, that was never colonized by any European nation. And so we do have some current realities that are based also on this, you know, fantasy that we're talking about. But the fact that they were not colonized and the fact that they were referring to the Europeans as colonizers, I thought was the most appropriate terminology in the context of what was going on in that movie.
Y'all give it up for a wardrobe one more time. Amen. Yes.
Hi, my name is Jennifer King. I work for the State Department, and I'm so glad we're talking about the comic book and that the brother brought up Egypt, because what a lot of people don't know, and Representative John Lewis, they actually produced a comic book when the Arab Spring happened in Egypt, that they were passing out pamphlets in Egypt about civil disobedience. So I just wanted to put that because it came full circle. Like, we learned so much from Egypt and how they looked at us of what we did to rise up to become president. And there's a comic book being passed around in Egypt to learn about how should they become like us.
That's from us, from the U.S.
That's from the U.S. Representative John Lewis. They produced that comic.
Always a strong fighter for civil rights, John Lewis. Well, next scene we're going to talk about is we have one more question.
Yes.
Right here.
Right here.
Right here.
The good doctors?
I'm going to say, first of all, for Mark John Jeffries, I want you to know that I was doing housework one day, maybe 20 years ago, and a commercial came on for People Peace. Anybody else remember that commercial?
Yeah.
And I stopped because the power of your voice, even as a little boy, was so great. And you impacted the way I raised my family. I want you to know. Because I wanted my children. I also wanted to ask the question of whether or not there was a foreign policy and political consultant on the screenwriting piece. And that question was for Mr. McCoy. Dean McCoy.
I have no idea.
As a storyteller, the way the screenplay was written, what is your opinion about whether the foreign policy piece or the political piece was written appropriately?
I think that was written appropriately in reference to the dynamics of the film, foreign policy. You saw the CIA involved as usual, someplace they're not supposed to be meddling around. Not to say that the United States does that. But as usual, you're going to find the United States foreign policy being, they say colonization, that's basically not United States, that's the Europeans. But right now, to this day and age, that's who we are. We are the colonizationists for the world of today, although they were trying to present it as being a European thing in the film. But that's us in reference to our policy. And at the end of the film, you saw the king in front of the, I think that was the United Nations. Yeah, and they're like, well, what do you have to offer us? You come from a third world country, looking down upon him even as he's speaking, and not realizing that, I mean, these people are living way better and far more advanced than we could ever dream of. And someone up here mentioned it as well. We tend to harness the ego that, we're better than so many other people and nations where, first of all, we have to learn how to live with each other, not to get all into this political humanity thing, but just the word race alone, and I say this a lot, the word race means that you're in a competition with others. I mean, when we can finally sit down and eliminate a word like that, and just, instead of every application I come up upon, I see what race are you, and now even have, the other. Why do I even have to do that? Why do I have to tell them what race I'm in? I'm proud of my race, don't get me wrong, but why must I be identified by the government in that aspect? My thing is just, I'm a part of the human race, but if you want to go back into, trying to identify me, I mean, they've been doing it for years, even on our social security cards. People don't realize that. So, in reference to that, getting back to your question, I think they did a good job on that, but I think they could have did far more in reference to that, because we are 400 years away from our African roots. So, we got to look at, where we are right now. A lot of people want to go back into the past and look into where we came from, instead of looking into the future and what we're going to do right now, with what's going on here. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the film. Thanks, Fred. Moving on to the film, we got to see Nakia for the first time. And, you got to see her in action, and they were running with the rebels and everything. And, what did Okoye tell T'Challa? She said, don't freeze. And what's the first thing he does when he sees you? He froze up. We get to see the love interest, man, and there was just a lot of love in that scene, and it made me proud of the fact that, it's not somebody having to step out of their race in order to do it. It's like, he's got a love for his African queen to be. So I thought that was real special. Kerry, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, at the beginning of the scene, I wasn't sure quite what they were doing, but then I was like, oh, now we're touching on child soldiers and kidnapping people from villages. So I like the way they kind of touched on that too. They did a good job on touching on a lot of different things in that regard, just to give you like a little something to think about. Like you want to be entertained, but the best movies to me are something that you go home with and think about, discuss with friends, and keep the conversation going. It was great to see her. I mean, if you just think about that, the whole aspect of that, people getting kidnapped out of their homes, their villages, whatever, and then forced into, because as you saw, she saved that young boy's life. She said, he's just a boy. He was forced just like the rest of them. So let him get back to his life. How she put herself in that situation, and I thought it was pretty powerful that, they don't give women that sort of power or the confidence of having that power to be like, no, you don't do that, it's too dangerous. And she just jumped right in and was like, nah, I got this, I don't need you. Matter of fact, I don't need everything we have in Wakanda, I need to be out in the streets and like helping. And it's great how it even ended. She was gonna be running the head, like taking care of the community center in Oakland. So yeah, I thought it was a great show of power and confidence.
Okay, we got a quick question over here.
Hey, my name is Dr. Hakeem Allah. So from the picture, I thought it was very thought-provoking. And there were 3 things that jumped up at me, but I'll kind of set it up before I mention those 3 things. One, if you go back biblically, you look at Cain and Abel, and then you go forward and look at Isaac and Ishmael. Then if you look historically with the slave trade, how many slaves each other, here we are today, it's African American connection. Sometimes and sometimes not, backed by African roots and how we got here. The 3 things that kind of jump up at me just for thought is 1, truth crushed into the earth rises again. 2, the sins of the fathers sometimes are perpetrated on the sons. And then 3, hurt people. And you kind of see all that come out of this. Those are my comments.
Go ahead, good comment for that.
Well, hurt people, we see that now. You got a really hurt person in office that's hurting the world, so. That aside, the part about when he froze, you know what it made me think about? How beautiful black women are. And how long we've been told that we aren't, although people want to mimic it. How many of y'all been walking somewhere and a guy has stopped and stared at you? I knew exactly what she meant when she was like, don't freeze when you see all that. The minute he saw all of that, and it made me, I tingled a little bit like, yeah, I'm just hot to death, I am. That's how I felt. Like she knew he would freeze because we aren't told often that we're beautiful. I think as long as I've been living, there's always been something. Your hair nappy permanent, arch your eyebrows, do something with your hips, put on your Spanx because your curves is popping. And that moment it was good to plant that seed of, that's how gorgeous black women are, that we can make you freeze like a deer in headlights just because you laid eyes on us. And if some young people don't walk away with anything else just based on what they do, because of what they think being sexy or looking good is, her wrapped in sheets was enough for him to stop and be mesmerized. And I'm like, hot damn, may my young brown and black girls walk away with that. You ain't gotta be naked, you ain't gotta be twerking. You were already cut from a cloth that made you gorgeous. So for me, that little thing,
That was a wonderful film. My question is for the gentleman in the back, the one who introduced everyone. I wanted to ask, I think I heard you say that she was some type of fight doctor or a ring doctor, and I just want to know, was you an actual professional pro fight doctor?
Yes, I'm a ringside physician for DC and Virginia. You might see me with some HBO stuff going on.
Okay, because I am a professional fighter.
Oh, cool.
And I'm coming from Midtime Academy. My trainer is Mr. Eugene Hughes, which is Kathy Hughes' brother.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get away and just see who you were.
I'm right here, brother. Hey, hi.
Over here, I got some ladies on this side of them I gotta get to, I'll be back. Go ahead, girl. And by the way, fellas, can I just say this? Every man in here has froze before, correct?
Yep.
Let's get focused. So we knew what she was talking about when he saw her and he froze. Didn't you feel that in your gut a little bit? Like, boy, I've been there before, man. Now, I wasn't jumping on nobody on no truck or nothing. But I was, you know, walking down the street or something. Here you go. Watch they freeze.
I don't think I'm gonna freeze over. I thought my arm was gonna fall. I felt like Billy D over here. You gonna let my arm fall off?
Well, I just want to point out that I thought that the film in its entirety was a great introduction to Afrofuturism, which a lot of us don't know about. And it's a movement that's been happening for years to address the feminine wows that, you know, they so beautifully put out in this movie. You know, it was just amazing to me how it didn't matter that he was a young prince or a king. When you saw Angela Bassett, she was Mother Queen, right? When you saw the general, she was automatically addressed as such, the general. You know what I mean? Even when, you know, the protagonist, her lover, that was made, you know, aware to us. And she stopped a rhino. Yes. It still was totally amazing to me that, you know, they were able to put the power of the Black woman on Front Street so beautifully. But this question has been in my head, if we could circle back for a while. I noticed that, you know, in one of the original storylines, you know, Warmonger, Killmonger, I'm sorry. Killmonger. I'm all over the place right now. I've been holding on to these questions for quite some time. But Killmonger, he was such a dominant character in the original storyline. Why do you think it is that they killed him off so fast? Because, I mean, it was the classic biblical, you know, outline of Cain and Abel, or am I my brother's keeper? And you know, I just think that the movie killed him off way too fast.
Well, real quick, you mentioned Afrofuturism, and I forgot to mention I'm founder of Afrofuturism Network. And if you're not familiar with the term was coined in the 1990s. However, Black folk have been writing science fiction and fantasy since the 1800s. Even had W.E.B. Du Bois writing science fiction short stories. To address the Killmonger character, once again, you know, partway through the movie, I was saying, is he wrong? I was trying to find reasons to dislike him, and I think towards the end they had to amp up the villainy. And two key scenes that did it for me was when he burned all the blue flowers. It was key because not only was he burning the flowers, but it was also him murdering all future generations and wiping out an entire culture piece. So that's when they really started to show the villainy of the character. But what was also key was, after that scene, Everett Ross, the white character, said he learned that from us.
Right. Yeah.
That was something that he was trained to do. So it was like, there was that African revolutionary spirit, but it had almost been like it was corrupted by this European way of thinking. And as far as his death at the end, I think once again the question was, could these two ideologies exist in the same space? And it was really his ego that wouldn't allow him to exist in the same space, because if you notice, the Black Panthers wanted to save him. Because I'm thinking, if I'm T'Challa, this guy's gonna be my general. You know, we gotta clear some things up. You can't go around trying to kill me. But in terms of his leadership, in terms of his skill set and all of that, there was a place for it. But it was just that he could not bend. He could not see any flexibility. There was no flexibility in him. And in as much as I love that last line, you know, when he was like, bury me in the ocean, you know, my ancestors would not submit to bondage. I thought it was a beautiful line. And I, you know, kind of like, man, if I go out, I like to go out with that line, you know. But at the same time, I think they were just kind of questioning, when is it time to kind of check that ego? You know, if you're going to be a revolutionary, there has to come a time where planning comes into place. There has to come a time where cooperation and flexibility comes into place. And if you're not willing to do those things, even in the spirit of revolution, ultimately you can't survive. And I think that's why, in terms of his character, he couldn't have lived to another film. Given the way he was presented, I couldn't imagine him saying, okay, put me in chains, but I just couldn't imagine it. So I think he almost had to do it.
And can I just add that when he destroyed the flowers, what you were doing, not only the future generations, you were destroying a culture. And for us to survive as a people, I think the symbology was we have to build on the culture, and we have to use the elements of the culture to empower the next generation so that they don't make the same mistakes over and over. The one thing that did strike me, though, that was very profound was in the end, as he was making his transition from this life to the next one, he was able to see the inner core of his being, of his history and of his culture being that of beauty, and to come to the recognition that maybe I was wrong, and maybe because the effect of the American culture and the environment that he had been placed in had created a monster. And because of that effect, he would never have been able, until the end, until he was seeing the light from the other tunnel, he would have never been able to appreciate the gifts that that culture brought into his not only being, but into the creation of a magnificent civilization. So I agree, he had to die.
Well, I think that was
real quick. Yeah, he died physically, but his spirit didn't die.
No,
because what I'm saying was, you need to open Wakanda and all the technology up to help all of us. And then the next scene we see, yeah, they're at the UN and like, hey, we like to introduce ourselves. We got some good stuff to share with you guys. So yeah, physically he died, but yeah, his spirit lives on. So yeah.
That whole character itself made me think of a term or description that was incorrectly applied to Malik El-Shabazz, otherwise known as Malcolm X. The hate that hate created.
Yeah.
And it was death to the core. I mean, basically, you know, he had his dad killed, and he just did everything he could to go ahead and avenge that. And along the way, you know, he got some bad training. You know what I mean? Some of these things stuck with him. And he went ahead and he got corrupted by it. And at the end, you know, he found some saving grace. I thought it was real special that, you know, T'Challa took him up, you know, to the mountaintop by Panther Mountain and just let him view the landscape and see how beautiful Wakanda was. Question.
Can I state something real quick? I kind of like really got behind Killmonger. I can relate to Killmonger because he wasn't a Wakandian. Let's really think about it. He was an African American.
That's right.
Yeah.
Born and raised in the United States. He'd never seen Wakanda till he went back and became king. How many of us going to become king or queen and then give it up to be second string? Number one. Number two, his agenda was to assist other blacks around the world. As Kerry stated, he got kind of off track when he destroyed, or was trying to destroy the future generations. He was angry, of course. The Wakandians killed his dad. That was the only parent that we knew that he had at the time. We didn't see the mother or anything around, so I'd be angry too. But yeah, I kind of like felt where he was coming from.
And real briefly, you know, when he was in the museum and he's looking at the artifacts, and he was like, "You stole them." That was just dope.
That was awesome.
Question. Comment.
I'm Storm, and
Storm. T'Challa's wife. What's up?
That's right. So I love the women and the imagery in this film, but what I found most profound was the dynamics in the relationships with T'Challa and Nadia, and also with the general. And I love the idea, which I think is more traditional, as far as a woman. Another thing I love is that they all are so sure of themselves. And as a woman, to serve your man, like, you have to be sure of yourself and your purpose. And they were true to their purpose, like that came first. And then they were able to love their man and love their community, or, you know, love Wakanda. And so I just think too often we fall into that European ideal of the woman giving up everything to support the man, which is nice, you know, but I think more
what's more important, or relative I should say, is that a woman, or more traditional, as a woman actually being sure of herself, being the core of the family, of the community, and then, you know, being able to serve a man, being able to be there, be a power piece for a man, and guide him when he's wrong, or when he, you know, support him when he's right. So I love that, and I just wanted to see your take, all of you guys, your take, your opinion on the dynamics of those relationships.
Well, I thought it was very special, the fact that Okoye was able to stand up to her man and tell him he was wrong. You know what I mean? That's love right there. You know what I mean? You're not supposed to support somebody who is going on the wrong path. You know, you're interested in their spirituality, the person who they are, and you want to build that. You don't want to take that away. You don't want them to feel better. You want them to become stronger.
For me, I'm gonna go ahead and say, hey, I love your glasses. And I walked away feeling like the black women were like the real main characters of the movie anyway. Like, I get you, T'Challa, and I see what you're going through, honey. But everything that those women did, even how they stood up for their men, we've been doing that as black women forever. We try to guide you, we try to help you, you tell me no, you do it anyway, fall on your butt, then you come back and you're like, well, maybe I should have listened. I think the other thing that I took away that I love, that while the men needed special herbs, it showed that black women are powerful and superheroes with no superpowers. All of them stood regally in the role that they played and were remarkable at it. If I'm a spy, I'm a spy. Watch how I do and did this. I'm a queen, I'm a queen. I'm a general, I'm a general. And a lot of times, we're given extra things that we don't need. We've been super. When you can raise a family on your own, work 3 jobs, all your kids are still loved, tucked in, dinner still on the table. We've been doing it, and I like that they added layers to how well we do it and how well we execute it. And that's like another takeaway that I'm hoping that as people leave the theaters, they're like, whatever step or obstacle you think you have tomorrow that you can't do, you got it. And everything that you need to get it done, already in you. Just go ahead and dig deep, dig into it.
While I was speaking of the women, one particular character that just stole my heart from the beginning. I know my heart is going out all over the place, but Shuri, come on.
Yes.
She's like mad funny, you know, technologically advanced. She was just leading the way.
Yeah. And can I just say that it is my sincere hope, my sincere desire that young women see this and look at the kind of STEM stuff, you know, now in science and technology, that they begin to embrace those as careers and realize that they are capable of doing that, and not only capable of doing it well, and doing it well to the degree that they can save an entire nation. And I think to relegate women to something less than that, and young girls who feel like all they have to do is shake their booty, I just let me call it, and I'm not wedded in the sciences. And I also think that helps young men begin to realize that if you're smart, that you don't have to be bullied, and you don't need to bully these children because they're intelligent, because that is what's going to save us, is the intelligence and the technology and the skills and the love and the compassion. And so this movie to me is a great stimulus for us to encourage our young people to go more into science, math, technology, and these areas that have traditionally not been where we went. And so the young lady, she stole my heart from the very beginning, because she was brilliant, she was quirky, and she was funny, and she was able to see through and anticipate what future problems would be and create a protection for that. And that's profound. That is profound. And she was female.
Yeah. And y'all seem to forget the funniest line of the whole movie. What are those?
Yeah, what are those?
Mark, come on, man. Get up, man. Silent boy, man. What's going on, man? You gotta speak up, kid.
I mean, everybody's...
No, you, man. What's up? Come on, bring it.
This is a comment or question for everybody on the panel, just keeping it in what we're touching on as far as the female role. I was speaking to Carrie earlier because I'm just baffled by the lack of love that black women seem to have in themselves, or we have for each other. Because I wasn't raised like that. I was born in the 70s. My mom raised 6 girls by herself. Nobody ever looked at any of us. We were all different. had dark-skinned sisters, light-skinned sisters. Nobody ever looked at us and said, your hair is too short, you're too dark, you're too skinny. So the overall, as far as the social thing in this film, I'm seeing a lot of people, I need to take my children to see it so they can see what Black beauty looks like. And that baffles me because I've always known what it looked like, because nobody ever told me that how I looked wasn't good enough. So I'm trying to figure out, why are we digressing? Why did we need this film in 2018 for a lot of people to have this conversation about, let me go show you what Black beauty looks like?
Oh, I can answer that.
Wait, Mark John Jefferson, switch to the head.
I'm back, y'all.
He's back.
I'm back. I got this. I got this, Sean.
Get him, champ.
Honestly, that's television. That's what our society has been fed, like my generation. Right now, well, when I was younger, we went through a phase of blonde hair, blue eyes. And then that turned into the women that were so-called attractive always being depicted, if they were black, as light-skinned. No offense to my light-skinned women, but that was everybody being light-skinned. And it was a way of almost showing them in a light where they were ethnically ambiguous, but being able to say, well, we had a black woman in there. So I've sat in on different production meetings, I've sat on development for some of the movies I've done, and just hearing the way that they'll break certain things down, it makes me realize, like, wow, that's really what they're trying to do. They don't want a certain strength to be seen, you know, because what movie was that? Planet of the Apes, when Caesar took the twigs and put them together and was like, apes together strong. And now I'm not saying, I'm not making it, no, we're not apes, I'm not saying that. But when the community is unified, there's strength. And one of the main things that we've struggled with for the longest was getting stories told our way, and stories that we relate to. And I was going to say this earlier, just to piggyback off something that was mentioned. Killmonger died because it's a movie. That's why. They killed him off because at the end of the day, regardless of them giving us, or of us having a movie that was so culturally sound, it's still a movie. So it still had to be entertaining, it still had to tie into the next Avengers coming up. But that's why it's so important that we support movies like this. Because the more and more that we support movies like this, the more and more our stories can be told. But if nobody actually sees this movie, it goes down to the failure, and then Hollywood goes, yeah, why would we put up another $200 million to do a black movie? They don't support their own work. You know, so... all my friends know this. I personally do not like submissive women. You know, I like when a woman is going to tell me I'm wrong. I've even said dumb stuff to chicks that I'm first meeting just to see if they're going to say like, what? Who told you that? You know, so, but one of the things I realized in the movie is that it was the women that saved Wakanda. At the end of the movie, besides T'Challa versus Killmonger, it was women against men. That's what it was. You had the general's lover and all of his men fighting all of the royal guards. I don't remember the appropriate name for them, along with T'Challa's little sister. You know, so for me, that in itself just showed the strength of how behind every strong man, there's a stronger woman. You know, and that's one of the stories I took away from the movie itself.
Great. So I wanted to jump in and address your question about why do you need to see, why do they feel the need to go to this movie to get that kind of affirmation about a strong black woman. And I think about, as an artist, I've grown up really studying how images are used. And images are very powerful things, and they're used to start wars, they're used to sell products. Think about how we are bombarded by images every single day. And now that we are in a social media age, think of how people are just constantly obsessed with just looking right in that Instagram photo. Look at people like the Kardashians that have made millions of dollars just on their image. So when you think about women going to see a movie that really empowers them, really shows them a positive light, it's really deep. Because that's the kind of stuff that, like, you were fortunate to grow in a household that was supportive of black women and strong women and not sort of adhering to a European, influence aesthetic. But there are many people that aren't. There are many people that walk by that newsstand and see like a cover of Vogue and see Charlize Theron and say, I really wish I looked like that. And it's a certain amount of unlearning that I think people of color have to go through to realize that, okay, I know what you're trying to do there. And you have to sort of go against it. And I think that seeing positive women, I can't emphasize enough. And I just really wish, and I swear to God I'm not kissing up here because there are a lot of beautiful black women in this room, but I just really wish that women would just rise up and take over. Because men really suck. Like, I keep hearing stupid stories and stupid examples about how men just do dumb stuff. Dumb, disrespectful, insecure-fueled things. And I'm like, damn, women, unlearn the nonsense that's been taught to you and take over. I'll be the Benedict Arnold and give you the secrets of how to take over, because it's really time for women to take over. And I think that really comes from a sense of self-love that obviously someone like you seems to have. But you really got to think about what's being pushed out there. And one of the things that really, I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but one of the things I was just having a conversation with my man about this, because we were watching Love and Hip Hop. I know, I have my ratchet, I love my intellectual things, but I have my ratchet, I love my ratchetness. And we're sitting there watching this show, and within the span of like 10 minutes, women just kept calling each other bitches. Hey bitch, 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 bitch. And I'm like, you know, where did these women get that from? Men. Because men refer to women as bitches. Where do you ever hear men calling themselves like a derogatory term like that, aside from the N-word, which is a whole other thing? But men don't sit around calling each other bitch unless they're trying to disrespect them. And what's the origin of that? Comparing a man to a woman. That's the ultimate insult. You're acting like a bitch. And so somehow women have sort of adopted this and they're calling themselves bitches as a term of endearment. And I'm like, guys, you're kind of buying into some brainwashing here. Stop. Like, I love the show Insecure, but what kills me about that show is the incessant usage of the B word and the N word. And I'm like, you see, and this is my thing, and we can have a debate about this, the only people that use that N word are people that either want to be down or people that are just lazy. And they grew up hearing it, and saying it over and over. And I find it hard to believe, looking at a character like Issa Rae and her girlfriend, who are accomplished black women, sitting around calling each other the N-word and the B-word. And they don't even sound like they were comfortable saying it at the time. Like, really? So I just think that sometimes you really need that real positive reinforcement, like a movie like this, where no one's really disrespecting anybody. They have issues with each other, but it's not a matter of like just blatant disrespect. And I think that that's why something like this is important for people to say.
And can I just add something to that from a neurobiological standpoint, because I think this is important. He raised a very interesting point about symbols. What a movie like this does is rewire the neural networks of our children, because they are layered with images that are very negative, that are either not looking like them, but they have to aspire to be something else. I mean, let's take Africa, for example. In Ghana, we've got women, African women, beautiful African women buying bleach cream in Ghana to bleach their skin, and of course it's creating problems like we did way back in the day. And so what is important is that the brain never forgets anything. And all of these images that our children have been exposed to are layered in a portion of the brain called the red nucleus. We never forget it. And so in order to have something else come forward, we have to begin to layer new images, new symbols, symbols that are more appropriate with us, for the brain to have immediate access to grab that up and go with it. You were fortunate in that you got supported, but a lot of things around you and your friends did not have that kind of support. And so therefore, those images do not, you said, why should we? Because they don't have that history. And so that neural networks have not been the same experience that yours is. So in order to have our children in a developing brain that does not mature until the third decade of life, we've got to begin to superimpose, superfuse, put in images of positive male images, positive African women images, and love between black men and black women. Amen. So that can be the model of what they want.
I didn't get to check right here because the energy in the room is awesome. But we do have some people to thank. We got our guest panelists who have been incredible throughout the evening. But there's some folks we'd like to thank that kind of helped us put the word out. First off, do we have anyone here from Nubian Human? Okay, well, we appreciate it. Nubian Human.
Lie about in the hall.
Excuse me?
A lot of your sponsors are in the hall.
Nubian Human?
No, I don't know which ones. I saw
Well, could you invite the sponsors into the room?
You got it? Okay. While that's going on, she's going to get our sponsors, Nubian Human. Is there anyone here from Kappa Alpha Psi, the Washington Alumni Chapter in the house? Yeah, people stepping out of the hallway. Come on now. Well, I do want to tell you that Daryl Lassane, he's an accountant, and he's a Kappa brother. He's giving away 6 tickets to next weekend's Black Party, and he said ladies only. So, 6 ladies.
You don't have to wear black.
No.
I would love to go to
Okay, there's 1, 2. Okay, come on up, ladies.
Well, don't they get 2 tickets apiece? Because you want to bring your home girl?
Kappa Alpha Psi does a lot of work in the community with mentors and helping kids, definitely sponsoring different things. Yo. Ladies only. Okay, there you go. What a gentleman. That's what's up. And we have one more. Come on, Allison.
She'll take it.
Okay. And while we're mentioning Kappa Alpha Psi, during the Black Party, you're welcome. During the Black Party, we wanted to donate something in return for them looking out for us as well. So what we have here is a book. A basket. I'm sorry. It's a donation basket. They're going to be bidding on this there at the Black Party. And what do we have here? We have some Prosecco, nice little bottle of that to chill with. Anybody familiar with Alex Cross, Black Hero? Yeah. Along Came a Spider. And we have Walter Mosley. It's not even in the stores yet. Yeah, I'm about to see. All right. And in addition to that, we have V.R. McCoy's books. Yeah, The Merchant. And Shaman the Awakening, which is the very beginning of Christian Sands, which is a phenomenal hero. And William Jones, you have a couple of books you got to come into the basket too, right?
Yes.
Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. Yeah, I forgot also to mention I'm author of the Ex-Con Voodoo Priest Goddess and the African King, where I do a historical analysis of Black comics, and I look at them through cultural, social, political lens. So I'm going to be contributing that to your basket as well.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you, sir. Let's give him a hand for that. All right. Well, we're supposed to be having champagne toast sometime soon, so can we get that on the move, please? All right, so we'll get back to the panel, and then we'll have a brief interruption for the champagne toast a little bit later. We're going to be toasting 2 things. We're going to be toasting to Wakanda, because that's what we all came to see, right? And we're also going to be toasting the fact that Van Dabre has gone ahead and forged into the literature world. We're starting Van Dabre Lit, and we're pleased to let you guys know that V.R. McCoy has joined us as far as being an author. His next book, Shaman, The Dawn's People, is coming out soon. And Carrie Height is going to be doing the audio work for both books, narrating. So look forward to about 50 different characters from this kid right here. All right, well, thank you for that. And we're going back to the show. We'll do the champagne toast a little bit later when they can get those passed around.
Real quick, when you were talking about women, 2 scenes from the movie struck me. One was the scene where they go into the casino, and you had the woman with she had the wig on, and you could see when she walked in that it didn't look right. She could have actually gone in without it. No one would have recognized her because Wakanda wasn't known and so forth. But I like the fact that she discarded it. And the way that she did it, she just tossed it aside as if to say, this is meaningless and so forth. I seen her turn it into a weapon, and I thought that was pretty symbolic because I think that there was a politics of hair going on. If you look at the women in the film, in terms of what their hair, hairstyles were or lack of hair and so forth, I think that was a big part of just kind of reinforcing that African beauty, and just kind of discarding that European standard of beauty. And for me, that's what that tossing of the wig represented. And also what was great was at the end when the women were surrounded and you had the Man-Ape village show up. I was like, oh my God, I gotta have the men come to the rescue. But if you remember one of the first scenes you saw women from that village as well that jumped into the fray. So I think that the director was very careful not to have men at the last minute come in and save the day alone, because you also had women from that group that you hadn't seen prior. that actually showed up to fight. So I thought that those two things were key in just kind of reinforcing that strength of black women. And lastly, when we talk about the representation of Africa, I find it interesting that when we talk about positive or modern representations of Africa, so far the two biggest I can think of are Wakanda and Zamunda, and neither one of them actually exist. So I'm looking forward to a time where we can see an actual African nation, an African country, be shown in a modern light. So that's what I'm really looking for. And hopefully movies like this have opened the door to now say, okay, what does Africa really look like? So that's what I'm also looking forward to.
Also, hopefully we can get over here, like in Detroit or Brooklyn, you know what I mean? Instead of seeing those neighborhoods go in a different direction, where a lot of the people who were born and raised there getting pushed out, we can reclaim and have our own Wakanda where we actually grew up.
I'd like to speak on that also. That's what I was stating a little earlier. We definitely need to just look at us right now. You know, Killmonger, that's what he was doing. Even at the end, he said, "Bury me with my ancestors." And he was referring to the Middle Passage, the slaves. So we definitely need to look at ourselves and our cities here as well.
I think one more takeaway would be us ladies showing up for each other. That's what I saw. I saw women showing up for women. When one got hurt, there was one. When they were fighting, they were all fighting. We don't often show up for each other. Some of the worst comments that I see online under pictures of women are by women, from women, about women. And then we will turn to the men next to us and be like, don't disrespect her. Sometimes you have to lead by example. So when you ask about why people are like, I want to drag my kids, they don't see this. We don't see it enough. We're still celebrating the first black person to get this and the first black person to get that in 2018. So that alone tells you that the narrative for us is very small. I've worked in media my entire career. All I had was Oprah. Now I got Ava DuVernay, and I'm mad that I only really got 2 or 3 to juggle, where my white girlfriends got like 12, 15, 20, 30 of them. So every time that there's an opportunity to change the narrative that's shown, we gotta show up. We have to show them this, because everything they're fed is the love and hip hop. For some people, that's their only introduction to black women hanging out. Me and my girlfriend, that is my best friend of almost 20 years. I ain't never thrown a drink in her face, ain't never called her out her name, ain't never left her nowhere. But this ain't the narrative that you see. So this movie represents more than just people looking at Afrofuturism. I really went there as a black woman once I started to meet all the black female characters. And for me, it was they showed up for each other, and I'm hoping that as we move forward, we show up and support us and show a different narrative of who we are, what we are, how we represent, how we interact, because our young girls are looking at that. Your young babies wouldn't feel so comfortable calling each other bitches if they didn't hear their mother calling their homegirl and their coworker, oh, the girl at my job is such a this, that, and the third. So be mindful of that as you walk forward. I also think you wanted to drag your kids out because this was the first movie where you saw us in every shape, every size, every hue. It's no secret that women of a darker tone, they don't get the movie roles like that. It's Viola Davis that says, stop calling her the Meryl Streep of Hollywood if you ain't gonna pay her like the Meryl Streep of Hollywood. They don't get the recognition. You knew who Paula Patton was, but Gabrielle Union been doing it. So it's that's why they need to see this. That's why they need to see women as generals and leaders and queens, because right now we're twerk team all-stars and whatever else, but we're more magical than that. And that narrative right now is not how magical we are. It's about what my hips look like, how long my hair is. So I'm not even hoping, me and God have had this conversation twice. My prayer is that everything that made us get dressed up and have parties and pop-up bars, we actually go out tomorrow, the day after, and start mentoring and talking and teaching. This movie does not become fact until we make it so. So I'm hoping that as we have these conversations, don't just tweet the pictures, go out and that girl in your family to show up to Thanksgiving every year with her boobs out but you around family, pull her to the side and ask her what's going on and what you need and how I can help you. Let's show up for the other women around us, not just your sisters and your best friends, but the chick at work that always look half as in her spank showing. Don't talk about her, don't gossip about her, show up and be there for her. When we become the change that we want to see, you'll see real change happen. For me.
Real quickly, just to let you guys know, I see they're passing the champagne out, But gentlemen, don't forget, sir, don't forget that we have Martinelli's because some of you don't drink.
That's
Okay, good. All right, cool. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. We had a question?
Okay, thank you.
We're coming to you, Richard.
My name is Alexandra Chavez Hadley, and I'm going to try and keep this question short. I'm known for talking, so feel free to just go like this. This is, I've seen this movie now. This is the fourth time.
Yes.
This is a great movie. It's the best every time I see it. And I do have to thank Sean Martinborough, who sent me via Facebook page, we're friends on there, that this was going on tonight. And I'm mentioning this because I met him a few years ago at AwesomeCon. And what he had to say and recommend to young students, period. The audience was mainly African American, but students, period, about what it takes to work in Hollywood was very realistic. You know, I mean, he didn't destroy dreams or anything like that, but he didn't let it get too political one way or the other. He stuck with what you had talked about it's a movie, and movies got to get made, and you don't get your point across till you figure out how they get made and how they get funded, and supporting the people no matter what color, although now there's a lot more diversity in Hollywood even. But I just wanted to ask, probably Sean knows, or maybe gentlemen here, and the young actor and voice actors, who greenlit this movie? Because there's a lot of money in this movie. And whoever greenlit it, don't forget that all of you are magnificent. Whoever illustrates it, whoever writes it, give creds to Kirby and Stan Lee and so on. But please support anybody that you know down in those credits that you can find out, and let us know if any of you are on Facebook. Let us all know, not just support. I know I want you to get more acting roles and so on, and I want Sean to stay working. But I want to see people supporting the people who said we got to greenlit Black Panther 2, 3, 4, 5, because that's what's going to keep all of this legend going. Otherwise, it will die, and it will die pretty quickly. But I'd like to really know, I mean, there's a lot of money put in this. And I know that Black Panther got a lot of attention from, you know, other things that he's been in. I know everybody's talking about it. But it will surprise you, I do a lot of Hollywood stuff, it will surprise you how quickly it can die. And it's not just a matter of you talking about it now. Hollywood runs on money. The movie stops making money, right? And it does, you can't keep it going. Indies maybe, but not major motion pictures like this. Please keep this going. This is a really exciting movie. I knew I was going to enjoy it, but it had so much depth to it that it's just, I'm amazed for it. So please tell us, anybody, who greenlit this one? Who really did? Who deep down at Disney and Marvel and so on?
I would assume that this is Marvel. This is a Marvel Studios thing. And for those of you who don't know, Marvel Studios, they're like their own independent company. That, of course, they are owned by Disney, but they pretty much call the shots with their films. And they started this back in 2008 with the first film, which is Iron Man. And I always credit the brains behind the organization, a man named Kevin Feige. He actually has like a 10-year plan for all of his films to come out in succession. And a lot of times I always hear, whenever I get interviewed about movies, people say, oh, why do you think it took so long for the Black Panther? Why did it take so long? And I'm like you mentioned, there are economics behind this. And there are obviously people with agendas, and people think that Black films don't sell. And I really have to credit Marvel for being slick how they did this, because if you really think about the first Marvel film, it was Iron Man. Now now for comic fans know who Iron Man is. But for your average person, they're like, who is that? And this was that people scoffed at Iron Man being the first film. And this is about a rich white guy in a super technological suit of armor. They were like, that's not gonna work. Well, that came out, then it made money. The second Marvel film was Thor. That was about a Norse god, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy with a hammer. And they were like, that's not gonna work. The second film was about Captain America, which was like this sort of patriot from the 1940s or 50s, you know, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, you know, all-American guy. They didn't think that was going to work. Now, you really think that people didn't think they were going to work, that they were going to get behind Wakanda? way back then. No, I think Marvel was really slick in how they did it. They built their universe up. They built the brand up. So people know that if you put out something and it says Marvel, there's going to be a certain level of quality to it. And what they were really slick in doing is that they integrated Black Panther in the last Captain America film. So that gave him a really good boost. And so, I was just saying this in an interview. I was interviewed by the BBC, and I was like, the slick thing about what Marvel's done with the Black Panther is that it fits within all of their other films. Like all their films are interconnected. So the next film is the Avengers: Infinity War, which takes place in Wakanda. So even if you're the most hardcore racist person, chances are you're gonna think that you're missing out if you don't go see Black Panther, because you want to see what happens in that story, because you want to follow the greater Marvel story. So I think that the way they did it was really slick, and I don't think you need to worry about there being another Black Panther, because this movie is going to make crazy money this weekend. So you're definitely going to get a 2 and a 3 and a 4. So I just think that, hopefully this will inspire other studios, because they copy each other. You know, when someone's got a bright idea and it makes money, then everybody wants to all of a sudden copy that idea. And hopefully a lot of Black-related films will get greenlit next week, because when they see the numbers come in for Black Panther. So, yeah.
And to piggyback on that, excellent point. Basically, Walt Disney was horribly racist. And right, and you see it flipped around now, thanks to Kevin Feige and the rest of those guys, man. They had that strategy, and they just got those guys involved. And you get Walt Disney involved, it's like some changes are coming.
But also, it comes down to economics, because even if you're not morally conscious and you don't morally want to represent diversity, because that's the reality, you're looking at there's a lot of money being left on the table. When you see films like The Fast and the Furious that are full of people of color making $1 billion, someone's saying, "Damn, we got to get on this whole black people of color thing." That's why you have A Wrinkle in Time, directed by Ava DuVernay. You know, that's why you see like these other films that are being greenlit, and people like Ryan Coogler given budgets of $200 million. I think he's probably the first Black director to ever get $200 million for a film. But this is $200 million.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, Ava got 100 for Wrinkle in Time. He got 200. But I think that, you know, if it makes money and people show up and you go out and you represent and you support these films, they'll make more of it.
Okay, real quick, I say this every opportunity I get, and as much as we're celebrating Marvel and getting excited about the Black Panther, please remember that Marvel has a checkered history, a checkered past when it comes to representation of Black folks. It's the same company that also gave us Whitewash, and if you're not familiar with who that is, it was Stereotype. And they've also done a lot of stereotypes throughout their history, and it's not until you get to most recent times that you kind of got it right. Because even when they had introductions in the 1960s and 70s of Black characters, there was always questions. In as much as we're celebrating Marvel, let's not forget that there are a lot of Black comic book creators out there that have been doing it right from day one, and they didn't need to be convinced to represent Black folk in a fair way. They didn't have to be told, they knew it from the beginning. You have comic books like Brother Man, you have Advent Comics, you have Kid Comics, you have so many other Black comic book creators, unique studios that have been putting out quality Black comics from day one. And if you want to talk about the children, when you go to these comic book conventions, don't pass those tables by. I speak to these comic book creators all the time, and they tell me all the time that Black folk, when they're at these awesome cons, when they're in San Diego and all these other comic book conventions, that Black customers are actually afraid to stop and talk to them. So if we're gonna support Black Panther and get excited about the representation of Black men and Black women in that genre and on screen through Marvel, let's get equally excited for these Black independent comic book creators and filmmakers that have been doing for years.
Yes.
Just to piggyback on what he said about Marvel's checkered past, it's true. You know, when you don't have a lot of representation, you'll take what you can get. And before you sort of get that consciousness period, like I know that when I grew up, I was a huge fan of Luke Cage, and at the time it was called Power Man. And it wasn't until I got a little older and I'm like, wait a minute, this is a character that has a big afro. He's got a metal tiara, a yellow silk shirt, blue spandex, walks around Harlem beating up bad guys saying "Sweet Christmas." And it didn't. And when I was younger, I accepted it. I just accepted it, and I was like, wait. When I got older, I'm like, wait, what is this? Then when I became a professional artist, I started working for Marvel Comics. They approached me and they said, listen, we want to do a miniseries where we're going to reimagine the character and we're going to set him in the Harlem Renaissance. And I said, sure, let's do it. And that really allowed me to take this character that was created in the Blaxploitation era and reimagine himself in the 1920s. First thing I did was give him hair, because a lot of times in black comics, black characters are either bald, they have a fade, because that's just how limited the artists kind of are. And I sort of patterned him after Paul Robeson, the classic black actor, put him in a suit, you know, and that was my way of kind of elevating this character that was originally created in a stereotypical mode. And I was really happy when the Netflix series came out, and the series creator Cheo Hodari Coker, you know, like we're friends, and I was like, dude, when you make the show, just make sure you put him in a suit. Find a way to put Michael Coulter in the suit. And so when I saw him in the suit, that was pretty cool. So I definitely, you know, feel what you say with regard to Marvel, having a checkered history, and you realize you can't get away with that in 2018. You'll definitely get dragged on Black Twitter.
Now that everybody has a little bit of bottle in their glass and whatnot, as we like to say, we want to get this toast out of the way, and I want to say to Wakanda, number one, to Wakanda. And there you go. And I would really appreciate it if you guys help me get behind us with the Van Davey Lit Project. We got some fantastic authors, some fantastic artists involved with it, and we could use your support because we're doing nothing but positive black things at Van Davey. Van Davey Lit. Thank you all.
So I've been doing like a bit of an experiment since this movie came out, and pretty much, you know, I like different types of African food, Senegalese, Ethiopian, and every time I go, I ask each person, do you know about Black Panther? Have you watched it? Do you know it's out? And a lot of them say no. To what extent do you feel like this movie, being that it's made here in the U.S. by two Europeans, do you feel like the message is kind of being spread properly amongst, I guess, the Africans stolen and brought to America and the Africa that chose to come here to America? Like, do you feel like it's spreading? Do you feel like everybody's getting the message, or is it just African Americans be like, oh yeah, this is a film for us, you know? Because I feel like it's something that we all need to hear.
Well,
so that we can unite and become that referendum.
Well, let's not forget, I mean, this character was created by two white men, but this is not the character they created. Basically, Hudlin and everybody else in there, Sean has his words in there as well. You know, they blew up this character and they created a universe around him. Wakanda became something else. T'Challa became something else. He had a father who was a king, descendants, everything. That was all brought about by black men. Understand?
We got another question over here.
And it's been screened in African countries, in Ghana, in Kenya, and other places. So other people, South Africa. So it's getting around.
Here we go.
Well, hi, I just want to say thank you so much for what the panel had to say today. It is really profound. I really gleaned a lot from your spirit of the knowledge that you brought to the table today about the film, so thank you. And I think what I really, it's just more of a comment and less of a question, but I really think that the movie for me, when I first learned about Black Panther, you know, I was a little girl in the South Bronx, and for me, reading was an outlet. And what I liked most about Black Panther was its universal appeal, because it broadened my world more beyond what I knew here. And so the main thing for me that the movie posed and answered so well was the question, who are you? I think it was asked like 3 times in the movie, and it really showed us who we really are in all different kinds of representation, from leadership to loyalty to love to fatherhood, brotherhood, sisterhood. It showed us that as Black women with our femininity, we can still be strong too, and that is acceptable. And I was really happy about that. And it also showed us how we really treat each other, or how we can treat each other with more loyalty, forgiveness, and mercy. And there was just so many different ways of love shown in the movie. And I just thought that was what was most beautiful about it. So, that's my thank you.
I'm going to talk next about a couple of characters that were in the film. that we haven't even touched on yet. Let's talk about Mr. Ross. Now, when he first came on the scene, it was like, wow, this is typical entitlement, typical arrogance. And then next thing you know, he was like saving people and jumping in the way of bullets and stuff. And it really lets you know it's not really what's inherent in people, it's how they're conditioned. So I really thought that was an important point. And I think Claw was actually the opposite. He was the flip side of the coin to Ross. And he was like evil through and through. And he also was racist and all sorts of things going on there. And he certainly wouldn't give his life for anyone else. So I thought that was an interesting dichotomy there. Anyone care to comment on that? Panel included.
Well, one of the things I liked about the Ross character was in many scenes, he wasn't really allowed to talk. Every time he would speak up, they kind of looked at him like, you shouldn't even be in the room. You know, so I thought that that was really interesting, and they got away from the white savior motif that you see so often in film. And at the end, yeah, he's flying the rocket or whatever, but it's the technology that was laid out by Shuri, and she's guiding him, teaching him how to do it. So I thought that it was really interesting that they had him in the movie, but at the same time, he was checked often. You know, like, you shouldn't be here, you shouldn't be part of this conversation.
Colonizer.
Exactly, refer to him as colonizer. So I thought that the way that they represented him was great, and like I said, and it was similar to the way he was represented in the Priest run with the Black Panther. And the Claw character, who I thought would have survived because he's like the main villain of the Black Panther throughout the years, it was really interesting that they actually killed him off in the way that they did, yes. And he kind of represented just that overarching colonizer that has plagued Africa throughout the years. You know, so I always thought that that was interesting. It was also interesting that he's the one European that actually knew the truth about Africa because, or about Wakanda, because he was that pillager. You know.
And what did he say?
Well, he was basically,
how did he refer to
he referred to it as that El Dorado that they've been looking for. It's like, you got it wrong, because he asked Ross, who's supposed to know everything, well, what do you think of Wakanda? He's like, well, you know, it's a nice little agricultural, you know, type town. He starts laughing at him, and it's like, no, you don't understand. This is the El Dorado that they were looking for in South America. You know.
But it speaks to an earlier point, how he like took and robbed and raped and pillaged, and then called them savages.
Exactly. At the same time, he's downgrading them, but he recognizes the strength. But it was also interesting that Killmonger used that, you know, to his advantage. So it shows the strategy of Killmonger and his wisdom, that he used them to a point till he no longer needed them, and then he discarded them. So I thought it was just interesting the way that both of those characters, Ross and Claw, were represented in the film.
Excuse me, if I could ask, sorry, I'll allow the lady to take the floor first.
Hello everybody, I'm Imani.
Hey.
I wanted to comment on the action. The action when they came to Oakland and the Panther was riding on top of the vehicle, and I couldn't even stay still in my seat. It was like, oh my goodness, I was just overexcited to know that when children of any color watch this film and connect the technology that's being guided by, you know, for the Panther to do what he done, and the sisters in their vehicle, they're flying through the city. Everybody was just so into all this action. I couldn't stay still in my seat. You guys knocked me. She was just like, I can't believe her. It was like I turned into a little child, and I started thinking about when the children go home from the movie, how will the parents get them to stay still? But I did want to comment on all that action. I'm still excited about it, and I'm so glad that this movie happened. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to comment about Ross, like you were saying, that he looked like they called him, you know, the imperialists, really. But to me, he represented America at its finest, which means it had its tentacles all over the world, and not necessarily for good. I think one thing about Trump, he says America first. In many cases, America says, no, we're here for you, but it's about America first.
Isolation?
No, not isolation. They still want their tentacles everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking to the technological aspect of the film, I mean, Did you guys notice how we saw a special effect that we probably never seen in a film before, where they had that kind of almost Play-Doh construction for the 3D thing?
Right.
And I was like, I've never seen that. And then when they had the trucks moving around, and I'm sorry, Sandtech was incredible. He picked up the truck from it, and he opened up the truck and could see what was inside. That was phenomenal. And the fighter jet, it was just incredible.
Hi. I'm new to all of this, so please have patience with me. But I was interested in, when you saw the actual end credits, it was a part where I think Claw, it was that him inside of the hut where they had helped him out. And I saw him missing his arm.
That's Winter Soldier.
You're civilian, man. You're civilian.
I'm a civilian. You gotta help me out.
I can understand the confusion because
I saw the guy missing his arm. I'm thinking about
I can understand that because he was missing an arm. But Winter Soldier is also missing an arm, and he basically Black Panther almost killed him in the Avengers movie.
Have you seen any of their Marvel movies? Have you seen?
I have seen some, yeah.
Okay,
I wasn't a very big comic fan, to be honest with you. This was actually one of the first times I've seen, really acknowledge the Black Panther series. And it changed the skeptic like me.
So if you go back and if you watch Captain America: Civil War, which sort of precedes this,
I did see him
here. Yeah, that was the guy at the end where he had the metal arm.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, okay. That's
See, I was trying to follow it.
So you took all the white guys looking left, right?
Yeah, he's basically in all of the Captain America films from the beginning. It's Captain America's buddy. Yeah.
Peaceful greetings. There are so many positive things to take away from the film that we've discussed so far. But as a cautionary note, I just want to add, we have to be very, very, very careful that we keep our eye on the legacy impact of colonizers in Africa, and throughout the world. Because a lot of the conditions that we in this film see Wakanda reaching out to solve are because of the legacy of colonization, the system of white supremacy. And if we have Claw removed, and if Ross becomes somewhat quieted, I think the trajectory of the films going forward might leave us with the usual antagonism between Black people from here or there or the next place. And so if there's an opportunity for us to influence the narrative going forward or make sure that we interpret it, particularly for youth, appropriately, I would just make that note for us to have in mind.
I think the big difference though is that is the intention. The intention of the Wakandans is to help others, versus the other countries saying, okay, these are the resources we can get from these other countries, and we're just going to take their resources and rob them, pillage them, and all that stuff. So I think that's like the big difference. At least the way I think, that's what I got the film. That the intentions are different with Wakanda going to help and share what they have versus looking at how they can exploit other countries. Yeah.
We put a lot of energy actually into the message of the film, just in the design here. I mean, that's kind of like some vibranium action going on there. We got masks over here from Cameroon and from Ghana. So, and then we have the natural resources right here, that were stolen from Africa. So, we really are trying to reflect what was the message of the film as well.
I just wanted to make a comment. So I wanted to make a comment about the Claus character and Ross. I love the element that they added to the movie. I think too often we fall into the narrative of good and bad. And I think even with the opening scene where the king has to make a tough decision, that there really isn't a good and bad, and that there's choices that people have to make. And that kind of takes us out of this heavy victimization, because this person's so bad and they're so evil. They're just doing what's best for them, and they're just doing what they see fit for them. And we have to remember, because we have this idea of Wakanda, and if we only get back to this, we're still going to make mistakes, even in Wakanda, just like the king. And we have to remember that, people are on their paths, And the best thing is to be true to you and pursue that and not look at, you know, this person is bad and this person is evil. How can this person help our cause? How can this person be a better person, and can we encourage them? Or do we have to erase them? Because sometimes that's a decision that has to be made. So I love the questions that, at least that posed to me.
All right, we're moving forward a little bit more in the piece. We're getting to the point where it's kind of near the end of the film, and you know, we had the, well, let's actually back it up a little bit. I want to talk about the two battles at the Falls. The first battle, I mean, how is that really a fair fight? Because I mean, you take away the Black Panther's power, and that's cool, but you just now did it, and you saw how it drained him. And you know, he was fighting cats, you know, who were just, this is how I walk around every day. So, you know, when Eric Killmonger was able to do what he did, you know, he was facing the drained guy. So I liked how, you know, they were able to bring him back, and it was more of an equal type of fight at that point, and the good guy won.
My question is actually pretty quick, and we haven't really touched on it, but I really appreciated how each time the kings were becoming kings, how they went back and they spoke to their ancestors. And I'm just curious, because I'm not too familiar with comic books, if that's a theme in Black Panther, that there is this idea of calling their ancestors and getting that information. Because I know when I grew up, we didn't talk about ancestors. That's something that I saw after, as I became an adult.
Yes, that's definitely part of the mythos of the Black Panther, and also being able to communicate with their deity. They've also done that on a couple of occasions where they could talk directly to the Panther god Bast. So yeah, that's something that pretty much been with the Panther series since the beginning, and they kept that going.
All right, so what does everybody think about that second battle at the Falls? Oh, my bad, Tommy Taylor. Sean's got me. Afro. I can do that though, Jeff.
Greetings, my brothers and sisters.
Here it is.
I am no longer speaking in the voice of my colonizer, so I am going on to embrace the motherland. No, but I thought the movie was fantastic, man. I like comic book movies or whatever, but I'm not like all into it like that. But so I thought it was gonna be good, but I didn't know it was gonna be like this good. I thought like from the storyline, how it like it grabs you from the beginning, even if you were like a comic book person or anything like that. Like the story and like the conversation between like just people and how that just carries you. You knew each of the characters. That grabs you. The princess, I mean, she was phenomenal. And I thought, and then like I think the dynamic between like the Black American and then the Africans, you know, was kind of interesting too. You know, how that like that disparity, you know, how like they say like Africans don't like Black people, you know, and that type of thing. But that was kind of on like shown there a little bit.
So, don't stereotype.
No, I'm saying that
half of my
like
boys
stereotype, yeah. But I think all these depictions of like Black people were shown in there, so I thought it was like a great movie that way. And then one thing I thought was kind of interesting to me, one point where when the Black Panther saved the CIA dude, saved the white guy, and you think like throughout history, like Black people have been saving white people, you know, and which in turn has been kind of some of our downfalls in a way. And so I thought like that was kind of interesting how that conflict, even with that, kind of showed, you know, different dimensions. But I thought it was just an awesome movie all the way around, and yeah, appreciative of it. It's cool.
Very good. And Tommy, he has his own Almost Ladies Night. It's like coming around once a month, I do believe. And we're looking forward to doing some comedy things with Tommy in the future. Tommy Taylor, ladies and gentlemen.
Stand up.
Absolutely.
Stand up all the time.
Everybody that suit.
Thank you very much.
Stand up.
I am standing up. And I'm not talking, I'm no comedian. You know, that's okay, I get it all day long. You look like Kirk Franklin or you short, Bonnie stand up with you. Okay, so life as it is. But I haven't seen the movie because I got here late. However, though, I've got mixed emotions. I've heard so much from this panel. I've heard so much from the people. My bottom line question is, because I've heard a lot of, this is something that our community needs to see because it's going to make a change to us. You know, a couple of years ago, something else came out and said our community needs to see this and needs to make a change. I've heard that Black women need to stand up and step out Well, I think black women have been standing up and stepping out for years. One started with my mother, who I think is a strong black woman. Then I can take it all the way back to, we have 2 strong black women in Washington that are representing in the pageant world like black women have never ever represented before. One is Miss Farron Amy Campbell, who's the first African-American black Miss Bikini for the United States. Second is Allison Hill, who's representing Miss Globe as a black woman. Now, I think that I'm gonna go see the movie. I told my friend outside that I wasn't gonna go see the movie because I got so many mixed emotions. I've been in the Afro movement for years from a kid. And I know how I never saw a disparity in African Americans and Africans because there's always been Africans in my household. My mom was a registered nurse at NIH, and she was in psychiatric care. So every visiting African doctor was in my home for dinner. So, I've been around Africans. I've never seen a disparity, even in school. So I'm just trying to see where is the next step from this movie? What is this movie gonna take our community? What's the importance of it? Other than the technology and the entertainment part of it. Because I've been seeing and hearing about the entertainment. But what about the effect of our children that you say are out there twerking? And our young men are wearing their pants down by their knees, ankles. What is it gonna affect them to go see the movie? What's gonna change them? Because I think change is affected by the people who are here in this room. We make the change, not a movie.
No, sir. I agree. And you got to understand this fact, though, that we as a people, not just African Americans, not just Africans, not white folks, everybody, we are moving forward. And if you don't see it, you really got to open your eyes. Because what happened when Trump did his thing, first of all, he didn't legitimately win that election, and everybody sitting in here knows that. And you're going to find out more about it as the trials go on. But the other part is that, what happens, with the Confederate statues when they're coming down, who are those people spitting on the statues and kicking the statues is white folks and stuff. So, there are some cool white folks out there, and, I want more white folks that are cool, you know what I mean? It's like, because it's a movement, and it's getting bigger all the time. We need to be coming together as a people.
I'm not sure when you walked in the room, but to me, I think this whole evening has been about what comes next. Like, I'm not sure that we've really talked about the entertainment outside of some people liking some of the fights, but I think we started with, it's been a long time coming since we've had a movie that had a narrative this great where we aren't slaves, we ain't hoes, we're not pimps, we're not dirty cops. Like when the Oscar time rolls around, it's planting seeds that we're so much better than sports and entertainment. The second one is just how we're shown, period. There is a generation of kids that have never seen African royalty, don't even really think that it exists. So the best thing I can do is give it to them in film first. The second part comes when we go out tomorrow. Like, do you mentor? What do you do? Because that was my question, period. Like, the movie's great. I'm asking you a question. Oh, you can answer too. I don't mind.
I've been here the whole night. I have been here the whole night.
Because your statement made it sound as if you didn't hear us collectively as a tribe saying what we needed to get done. So it came off as slightly condescending because some people were throwing eyes like, wait, where you been all night? Which is why I asked, because I'm always asking questions. To me, it moves forward, and we talked about it before. Mentoring, giving back, planting seeds, teaching sustainability. Sometimes you have to show people something different. Outside of this, we saw Coming to America, which was a comedy. So it was almost like the thought of us being African royalty was a joke. Now you come back to here in the midst of Black History Month, where we're learning that we did traffic lights, things that the same young women that you're thinking because their pants are sagging don't know or don't care. They are inspired by this. I've seen more young people gather to see this movie than old folks because it's new to them. When was the last time you saw a movie of this magnitude with a starring Black cast that didn't have any of the normal negative narratives associated with us? That's how it starts. There are white people that have never seen African.
My point is my point.
What's your
All
point?
that is great. My point is really removed from me, and that's my point.
We continue forward. Now that you know that African royalty exists, it's up to us to go back and plant these seeds. If you live on a block and you're not mentoring the same men that you're looking at with their pants sagging, then you're not helping us either. So to me, it's you being the change that you want to see. I grew up in foster care. I'm an orphan. I spend and dedicate my life to helping homeless youth and finding forever families for other teens. So to me, it's in your actions. It's in your actions. I think everybody who's seen the movie is walking away with something different. I used to be one of those black people that was like, white people can't help us, until I learned that it's gonna take a few white people giving up their privilege to help me in my movement. I've been the girl side-eyed some chick whose shoes were linked over while I'm at the mall. This movie made me check my damn self and how I'm interacting, how I'm motivating, how I'm inspiring. That's the change that starts tomorrow. When you walk out the theater, will you be different? Yes, because I've seen different. I'm gonna act different. Now you make that the habit. How do I make it the habit? By leading by example. I'm gonna high five my queens. I'm gonna tell them I'm beautiful. And you know what happens? The person next to me that's always calling you bitches and hoes, well, she's saying queen, well let me try that. It's up to us to make these the positive narratives. I need for people to see this movie. I need the white people who think that we ain't done nothing, don't do nothing, and don't know the cloth we cut from to see it. I need the young black kids who think nobody cares, that they not cut from nothing, that they're not nothing to see it. You see what I'm saying? So this is how we start. Join me tomorrow, we can do it. We can do podcasts, we can do whatever, but until we are physical in our actions, nothing changes. So don't question us, because we're here. We saw the movie, we gathered, we're having a conversation to move it forward. How do we help the people who don't, that were like you, that because you heard a few things here and there, I ain't gonna go see it. You know what happens when you don't buy a ticket? The black movie fails, so then we don't get it, and then 2 years from now, we're still complaining that we don't see black people on the screen. That's how we change. We show up, we show out, and we do it over and over and over again.
Let's see one of the gentlemen to chime in on that point as well. Y'all froze, huh? Come on, folks. So listen. I think Dr. Newton said something. If we can respect the mic right quick, I think Dr. Newton made a very, very strong point about the brain and how it needs to be prepared and how things need to be introduced to it. So we did grow up on Coming to America, and we did laugh. So it gave us a depiction of Africa, but it was more comical. So we did kind of laugh. You understand what I'm saying? But I cannot lie to you now. This movie is different. This thing do tap into that spirit. If it's in there, it will come out. So I do believe what Dr. Newton is saying, when the brain needs to be introduced to different characters, different ways of life, different thought processes. If I'm 6 and 7 years old and I'm at this movie, when I leave out of here, my mother is definitely a queen. There's no doubt about it. Our women in our movies growing up were, crack addicts, prostitutes. The men were pimps. They were hustlers. This movie was beautiful, to be completely honest with you. And I went into the movie going, whatever. And this movie was beautiful. And I sat on the front row with a crook in my neck, like, I'm enjoying the crook in my neck. Don't know how, don't know why, but this is all right. The last time I felt like that, I was in church eating the butterscotch candy out of my grandma's purse. And I was like, this candy is amazing. I couldn't put my head down because I didn't want to get a whooping because I wasn't supposed to have the candy. But this movie, I'm telling you, that passion that she's speaking with, that thing feel good, man. That energy feel good. So if we can just take this, and it's not gonna happen overnight. And I want to make the point of when the two gentlemen, when he took my man up, the villain, what was his name? Give it to me. When he took him up, he still showed empathy and allowed him to die in the sunset because he wanted him to see what his father had talked to him about. Now, I do that a lot, even with my brothers who shag their pants, they hustle, they carry guns, they sell dope. It's my job to show them the sun. That's my job, because I've been there, I've done that, but it's my job to bring him to the mountaintop and say, this is what our fathers were talking about. But the difference is I'm not going to let you die up here. You understand? I got to save you, but you got to be willing to save yourself. And the thing about that question is, which is it's a great question, but when we're talking to people around us, they still have to be willing to save themselves. So don't get so caught up in trying to save everybody. Save you. And then go out here and do community service, mentoring, and outreach. But tell people, listen, I gave you the blueprint. You got to build the building. I'll be right back. You understand what I'm saying? All right, now let's keep pushing.
All right, well, actually, that's good commentary. I would say Jeff's butterscotch dreams. But right now it's time to close the panel. And it's not the end of the evening. You know, there's plenty of interviews Allison will be conducting by the Step and Repeats out there. And we're going to have the Meet the Artist panel over there as well. That's starting now. So thank you all for coming out. I did want to say we dedicated this episode. This is the 20th Power Watch that we've done. And this is the 25th actual event that we've done. I want to dedicate this to Patria Finlayson, who was at every power show that we ever had. Rest in peace. We love her. Thank you.
So everybody, please join me, and we're gonna just collectively continue a continuous round of applause. Please join me and putting your hands together for Dr. Newton, William Jones, poet, Kerry Height, V.R. McCoy, Mark Jeffries, Sean Hartberg, and Dr. Greg Banks. Y'all come on now. Black Excellence. Thank y'all for your questions. Thank y'all for your time. DJ Zulu, give it to him.